Welcome to School of PE podcast. I'm your host, Chris Miller, and I'm so glad that you could join me this week. We are going to discuss topics about FE, PE, and SC, and we're also going to answer questions that will help students prepare for their exams. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of the School of PE's weekly podcast. I got a special guest with me today, Isaac Oakeson from the Civil Engineering Academy. So please welcome him, and he'll kind of give you a little bit about it. But I'm sure a lot of you guys probably already know who he is. So Isaac, thanks for joining us today.
Man, you act like I'm a celebrity. I'm not a celebrity, man. Chris, it's good to be here. Yeah, I'm part of the Civil Engineering Academy. It's something I share with School of PE is kind of how I started this thing, but really just a guy in the trenches trying to help people help them on their exams, and started Civil Engineering Academy to help them do that. So it's been a fun journey. It's taken me a lot of different places and interviewing a lot of different people. And we always try to stay on top of the exams because that's the main topic. But yeah, that's kind of the background of me. I am a practicing engineer as well. I actually have been in the utility world, the energy sector, for my career. And I actually practiced doing transmission engineering design, which a lot of engineers don't even know that's a discipline or an area of focus that they can go into. But I can tell you it's a good one. It's pretty lucrative too. So, if I could pitch any engineers debating on what they want to do in their career, it might be a good route.
Sounds good. But Isaac, again, hey, thanks for taking some time out to come and chat with us. A big topic out there in the engineering world, at least for the civils, is bye-bye paper and pencil, and welcome to the CBT. So it looks like the granddaddy of them all had finally made the transition to the CBT, the computer-based. So let me ask you, why the change, you think, from paper and pencil to CBT in the first place?
I think there's a variety of reasons. And well, obviously, I think that the top one is, at least what NCES likes to tout, is that there's security behind going with a computer-based testing platform. So that's definitely a reason. There's a lot of other reasons too. I think another reason is for students that are going to take this, there's more flexibility on when they can take it, and just getting that scheduled for them to come and take that at a testing center that works for them. You can take it more often, which is nice for students. We're so used to, we've been ingrained that the PE exams only offered twice a year, and now we can take it a couple more times in a 12-month period. So there's a variety of reasons. And also, with obviously the pandemic and COVID, this thing has been accelerated to go computer-based. And there's reasons for that too. So I think you don't have a huge audience. You don't have a ton of students in a conference center being moved in like a herd of cattle anymore and trying to find a spot. And there's some safety around that as well. If we ever had another pandemic some other time in the future, they can really try to keep people safe by having it in a smaller testing center and really following health and safety protocols that way too. So there's a huge variety of reasons why they're going this way. And it's been coming for many years, starting with the FE exam and slowly getting to the PE exam. We've all been waiting for it.
I agree. And then, it was kind of a shock when not a huge shock, but when they moved it up a year, it was like, ooh, preparation is not only for people getting ready to take the exam, but also for, exam prep providers. You had to kind of get to moving. So that was a fun experience for sure. They started slowly knocking off the exams, right? FE, and then the smaller PE started going, and it was just a matter of time. So it's exciting. It's here. I believe the first testing date available is January the 2nd. So they even accelerated that because originally it was scheduled for April.
Right. So yeah, everything's been accelerated and getting this out the door. And I think that dealing with COVID and conference centers and state-owned rules was just a big mess for the NCES. And they wanted to get this out the door as soon as possible because they didn't have to worry about testing centers closing down in specific states and moving students to different locations. Like that the COVID stuff really put a hamper on the whole testing adventure, and students were frustrated too, finding out either they couldn't get into a conference center, or if they wanted to take the exam, they were moved. And so they've been preparing for 5-6 months now, and it just
Right.
didn't happen. So there's a, those are all good reasons to move this a little quicker into the CBT format.
I agree. And then, frustration's a big thing. I mean, the pandemic was a big enough toll on everybody on its own. And then you had the cancellation of the exam, last spring, and then October, California people couldn't take it. So you think about it, no new engineers for almost a whole year for the state of California. So hopefully this will alleviate that. And then also you said a lot of safety concerns can be addressed as well. So it's exciting. I think at the same time might be a little bit scary. So maybe can you give the audience maybe some advice on how to approach an exam, paper pencil versus CBT?
Well, I think there's a few things that you have to keep in mind, and a lot of engineers have this ingrained in their head too, that the exam's always been open book when we had that, and now it's not completely closed book. You're still going to have access to the NCES handbook. You'll also have access to codes that are specific to your own depth exam. Now, what's surprising, at least what I've discovered, is that there was always one or two depth subjects that didn't require any codes. It used to be geotech and water resources. Now they all have a code that is referenced for your depth exam. So you can't get away from finding an exam that doesn't have a code associated with it. So in order to prepare for a CBT exam versus a paper-based, that's the first thing is, the resources that you've got at your disposal, and understanding what you have, understanding how you can use those tools. As it goes computer-based, you're going to have your exam on the right side and these codes and the handbook on the left side. Know how to use the search functions, know that material very well, so you can lean on that because it's going to be the only thing you have. The other thing, as it goes computer-based, is that they introduce those alternative item type questions, which seem to bother a lot of people when they hear that. But the truth of the matter is that the majority of the exam is still going to be multiple choice. It's not going to be all alternative type questions, every other question, but those are still things that you want to keep in mind as you're maybe practicing exams or looking at problems, is that you maybe want to think about, well, how could they ask this problem differently that aligns with these alternative item type questions? And we can talk about those either later, but you have to prepare a little bit differently going from the paper-based to this computer-based exam for sure.
You touch on an interesting subject. So yeah, let's continue with that. So the AITs, new additions when the CBT, can you maybe give an overview of the different types of AITs that they might come across on the exam, but also how you kind of touched on it, how you approach it while you're studying to tackle those AITs that you'll come across?
Yeah, I mean, this is my own opinion, but I think that multiple choice still gets the job done. What they're doing now is, because it's computer based, you can use a mouse and point and click and do different things now that they didn't have access to at the paper based exam. But those same questions could be rolled up into a multiple choice answer as well. But now we're going to throw it at you a little bit differently, just to test, mix things up and test you a little bit differently. To test your engineering knowledge. So yeah, there's a few different types of questions they can ask you now. There's drag and drop, where you can drag an answer or things into specific spots. There's select all that applies. So it doesn't just have to be four answers anymore, A, B, C, D. It could be multiple things, and you need to select which items are what. There's a point and click. So if you had a graph or something, you might have to click on something to show where the answer is. And then my favorite is fill in the blank. And who knows how many significant figures there might be there, but you got to put something in there.
That's a good breakdown of the different type of AITs. So, even before Civil went CBT, I got a lot of questions from whether they're electrical, chemical students about, well, now the exam is closed book. Is it easier or harder? And, just when I remember when I was in school, whenever someone would have an open book exam, all the students, all my buddies, oh, this is going to be the easiest exam ever. And I was like, well, I don't think so. I said, because now the professor's probably expecting you to get some things right because you have access to to an open book. So what's your opinion? Easier, harder?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, there's two things that come out of this. One is that students are going to be extremely focused on the material that they have on hand. And so in that sense, I think the exam is easier and that you're not going to bring in a suitcase full of books. You don't have to look at every single reference or practice exam that you have at your disposal because you just can't bring those in anymore. So I think your efforts and your focus is going to be extremely laser focused and that's a good thing. And I think in that sense, it makes the exam easier. Are the questions going to be easier? I don't think the questions are going to be easier. And here's the other side of the coin is that I also don't think that the reference handbook and the codes should be the only thing that you should be studying from as well. So instead of people saying, "Oh, I don't need any other reference material anymore," that's not completely true, and I hate to break that to people because if you go look at that handbook, it's just a list of equations and graphs. What's are you gonna learn from that? Like you need something to teach you this stuff, and so you guys got School PE's got good books, and those are still great resources that you're still going to be leaning on and courses to really learn the material. So in my mind, I think that it actually added another layer of study material that you're going to have to know. And obviously that handbook is going to be your go-to source for all your equations, but you still need some things that are going to help explain those things to you, especially if you've been out of school for some time.
Right.
So that was a long answer.
That's a good answer.
What do you think?
I agree with you. And I'm glad you kind of touched on it because it's funny. It's like, when I'm talking to students about a computer-based exam, I tell them, look, your only friend on game day is going to be the reference handbook. That's all you have access to. But it's not going to be your only friend while preparing for the exam. They're like, no. If it's not in the handbook, you don't need to know it. And so it's nice to hear from you as well, kind of bring your perspective on, yeah, you're going to need to know things that are outside of the handbook. So I think sometimes people think in the sense that, oh yeah, I just need to know what's in these 400 pages.
Yeah. And this is hard because the handbook is brand new. And so you're going to have a first round of people that's going to have to use that and learn from it. And the NCES updates this often and frequent. And so they might not have everything that is on the exam. They always put a disclaimer on there that they can ask stuff outside of what's in there. I do think they'll try to keep, obviously to what they're giving you in that book. But in my own just glance through and look through things, there's just a lot of stuff that used to be on the paper-based exam that I'm not finding in the handbook. Where you had other references you could turn to get equations and help on. It's just not going to be found in that handbook anymore. So, the question is, do you have to commit some stuff to memory now? And you probably, you might, and that's fine. I don't think we should be scared of this going CBT at all. And I think if you prepare right and you're still using the resources that are available, even right now, you're going to be well prepared to take the CBT exam. The beauty of the new exam is also that the specs didn't really change. Like it's the same format. So the material is going to be virtually, the way it's been. So, get familiar with how they administer the exam, get really familiar with the codes that they are now telling you need to know. And I think you're going to be okay. Get a lot of practice problems under your belt, get some additional material, but don't be going into the exam being worried about it and being scared about it. Go in with confidence, knowing you've prepared, you've practiced a lot of problems, and I think you're going to be okay.
Yeah, great. Very helpful information. And I think you're right. A positive attitude walking into the exam hall is important. You don't want to walk in feeling defeated because you might, not perform as well as you actually could. So very helpful advice. One other question, I also get to is about time management. And, sometimes I've been amazed when I talk to students and they're like, yeah, I'm taking in a whole suitcase worth of books. I'm like, well, that's great. I said, just, make sure you tab your material so that way you're not spending a lot of time flipping through pages trying to find things. So do you think time management becomes any less important now that you know you only have the one reference to go through?
I don't. I think time management is always a key on these exams, and students are always surprised about time and dealing with that, and learning how to put pressure on yourself way beforehand before you go into these exams is really key to being successful in taking them. Because if you don't give yourself that pressure and then you go into the exam, you're going to be surprised, or you're going to be you're going to start solving a problem that's very difficult, and say it took you 10 minutes, and then you've left all these other easy ones that you could have gotten through. And you don't want to be guessing on a huge volume of problems. So I think time management is still going to be key. If the FE is any example of that, it is still something of an issue that students need to be aware of, and that they need to, like I say, go through practice exams, really set up an environment that's going to help you find success in putting pressure on yourself well before you go into the exam during test day.
That's some great advice. So now that the last paper and pencil is in the books, done, moved on to a new format here coming in January. Have you fielded a lot of questions from people that are wondering, okay, well, what are you doing to help prepare, or have you made some changes to the existing courses to prepare for the CBT? I know the syllabus and that hasn't changed, but maybe some approach might be different to how your courses might be running.
Yes, I mean, every course creator, and you guys are doing this too, it's like everybody expects you to flip a switch as soon as a spec changes, or there's new material that we need to reference. It's hard to steer that ship sometimes, and we can only move as fast as we can move. But like I said, yeah, the beauty is that spec didn't change, so that material that's still out there is still really good. And engineering concepts just don't change that much there's only so many engineering concepts that you can test on, and so those don't change. But the things that are going to change, and that I can see instructors and course creators, things of this nature, that is going to change, is that we'll probably need to reference sections in the new handbook. That's where people should have their head when they're looking for equations, or even identify that, hey, this isn't in there anymore, or that you might want to commit something to memory that used to be in reference handbooks or whatnot, that maybe isn't showing up in there anymore. But it's a common question that usually hits the PE exam. So I think those are things. Another thing is, I think course creators want to try to mimic the testing environment. So you'll probably see more computer-based type of applications, or a testing environment where you're trying to give people a live simulation of what that exam might feel like for them. So that's something that you'll probably see as well. Those are my thoughts. What do you think, Chris?
I agree with you. And,
you're in the same boat.
I'm in the same boat. So we actually have a CBT class starting Monday. So, but you're right. It's not flipping a switch. Even when you think you have everything planned out, some monkey wrench is going to come into it. For example, last year they updated the FE syllabus, and I think the 10.1 handbook was supposed to come in July 1st or something. And so we updated our materials, reference the 10.1 syllabus. Before July 1st even happened, 10.1, I think 10.01 came out. And I mean, there was probably no page number change or anything, but people are like, wait a second here. You're referencing 10.1 and now it's 10 point, dot. And so it's just amazing how freaked out people get when just maybe the most minute changes occur.
Yeah. So this is something I try to drill on students. It's on them to put paper to pencil and solve problems. We can reference as much as we can, but they're going to be the ones that have to actually find this in those books. And we can't keep up with as fast as the changes are made. That's just, it's very hard to do. And there is an effort, that is done, but it is hard to do. It's hard to steer that ship, when things are moving. So, at the end of the day, if you're off a page number or whatnot, be a little forgiving of these course creators. And at the end of the day, you're the one that needs to know where that is in the material. So open it up, and try to find that, because you'll be better off for just doing that little exercise yourself, because you're the one that needs to know where it is at the end of the day.
Absolutely agree. I mean, I remember, so let's say something was on page 71 in the 10.1. And so I remember getting a call and they're like, oh, no, you're completely wrong. I said, did you look on page 74? No. I mean, sure enough, there it is. So you're right. They're the ones that, need to do the work. We do whatever we can to make sure that everything's up to date. But I mean, when on-plan changes happen, it's difficult to steer that ship. And, we do the best that we can. But I do agree, maybe one of the biggest changes even to our format is making sure that the course materials reference the sections for the NCS reference handbook, just so that way you're familiar with how to navigate through the book. That way you're not spending a lot of time during the exams being like, where the heck is all this stuff? So it'll be interesting to see. I'm excited to talk to people that maybe are brave enough to take the exam on January 2nd. Be a great way to kick in the new year. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
I agree with you. I did a little bit of a poll, and I was anticipating that many people would be discouraged by the CBT exam. But what I'm actually finding is that a lot of people are encouraged about it going CBT. A lot of the newer students are coming from taking the FE exam,
Right.
which is computer based, so they're very familiar with how that is in the type of questions. Some of the old school guys, we're still stuck in the paper based zone, but people that come from taking the FE, they are very comfortable with the format, and they look forward to not having to bring a suitcase full of books and reference material. That excites them. And a lot of people do wonder if it's going to be easier. And some people have asked if when it goes CBT, is it going to be a 6-hour exam instead of an 8-hour exam? And that's not the case. So we're going to have to put the disappointment on that one.
It'd be nice to cut off a few hours out of that exam. That's for sure. You're absolutely right. I tell people, a lot of people, I tell them, like, you've been through this. It's not your first rodeo. You took the FE when it was computer based, so it's just a different exam, but the same format. But I think change scares everybody, I think. But I'm in the same boat with you in the sense that I'm surprised how many people are ready to go. Like I said, we have a class start Monday. I'm like, wait a second, where are all these people coming from? I thought most people would maybe sit out the round and maybe try to hear from friends or colleagues on, what to expect from the exam. But I think a lot of people are just going diving both feet into the water and sink or swim.
Let's go.
So, yeah, might as well.
I think it's a good thing. I think the NCES has historically seen a dip of registered students when they switch to CBT. And, I think people are cautious about jumping into that so quickly. But I think people that have got the FE under the belt, like we said, they're already familiar with it. So why not just jump into it? And with the new format, you can take the exam up to 3 times in a 12-month period, once per quarter.
Mm-hmm.
There's obviously some state regulations as to how
Right.
many times you can repeat the exam. So you'll have to figure that out for your own state. But that's kind of nice, to know that if I fail, I could take this exam maybe in 2 months, and try again, versus waiting 6 months to try it again. Keep
Right.
things fresh, find out where my mistakes were, and let's go again.
I agree. I mean, like before, like let's say you didn't pass the April exam, you're done till October. But now it's like, you fall off the horse, you get right back on. And, for example, I teach one of the PMP courses, and that was one of the benefits of that exam is let's say you take the exam on a Monday, you don't pass it, you can go back tomorrow and take it. So there's no more, waiting and wondering what to do. And then also maybe starting to doubt maybe what you did previously. This way you just fall off, get right back on. So I got an interesting question for you. So let's say I was studying for the paper pencil. I had my strategies, my techniques, and then I sat the last paper pencil out, and now I'm going to go ahead and take the CBT. Should I kind of just throw out everything that I was doing and maybe find a new game plan to approach this, or can I stick with my original plan?
I mean, I wouldn't change a thing about what you're doing. The study schedule that you've committed to, I would keep it rolling. The only thing you need to put into place now is getting to know that handbook. And you've probably already been studying the codes for the most part. And so let's find out if there's anything additional there that they might have added. A lot of times they add codes, but really it's just a statement and a problem that they've they've quoted or referenced. And so maybe you're thinking, I need to know the whole reference or code or standard, but really it's something you kind of already have known already. They just need to document that we're going to use a code for some of the questions. And so no, I wouldn't change much at all about what you're doing. If you've just recently taken the paper based, you feel like you probably didn't get that one, I'd get back on it, go take the CBT and keep your study schedule going. The spec's the same. The problems are, they're engineering problems. They're not going to be way out of touch with what they've got there. And I think you'll be okay.
Very good. So let me ask, so when you took your FE, was it CBT or paper pencil?
When I took it, it was still paper. It was the old Scantron. And in fact, when I took it, man, I can't believe how many years it's been now. It changes so fast. When I took it, you could change your exam like on the fly while you were sitting there. So, when I took the FE, you chose whether you were going to do general civil or general. Oh. And before you sat down and took the exam, if you wanted to change your exam in the middle of it, you could do that. So they don't let you do that anymore. When you register, you have to choose what you're going to do, and you're committed to it. In fact, now if you do change it, they're going to hit you with a fee to change your exam. Right. So
it would be cool though, of that. If you're sitting down taking the transportation exam and you're like, wait a second, no, I think I'm going to swap over to water resources. I mean, and then if you could just carry over the first half of that exam, that'd be even better. That's pretty funny, actually. So have you fielded a lot of what are the more common questions that maybe you've fielded over at the Civil Engineering Academy regarding the exam change?
Obviously the reference material, if people should be worried about, how their study habits, similar to what we talked about earlier. And just like the general format of things, the exam cost, the testing center, how do we get going with that? And like I just mentioned earlier, if you register for this exam and you change your mind, they're going to ding you with the cost to do that. So, my advice would be to, know what depth exam you want to take, and let's commit to it, because every time you change your mind, you're going to pay for it. And even if you cancel and reschedule your exam, unless it's a really good reason, they're going to ding you for that as well. But yeah, the reference material, the handbook, usually like how are your courses going to be updated, to meet the new handbook and the specs, things of that nature. I'm trying to think of some other ones that have come in recently, but those are the main ones I get very frequently.
Pretty much same questions. So here's an interesting, we talked about flexibility earlier, flexibility of being able to change your exam date. So do you see that flexibility as being good and bad? Meaning like, let's say I'm going to take my exam June 30th. So I set up my study plan and all of a sudden I'm like, I can always move it. So what are the pluses and minuses?
Yeah, this is a plus and a minus, because it's human nature. Like if you can commit to a deadline, it's human nature to, get prepared for that deadline. But now knowing that you can just kick that can down the road all the time, people end up feeling like, well, I'm getting close to the exam period, but I'm not prepared for it. So I'm going to keep kicking it down the road. It was kind of nice when it was only twice a year. You know what I mean? Right. Like you had to commit to that, because if you missed it, you were out for a long, long time.
Right.
And now, because it's offered so often, people do kick that can down the road quite frequently. But that's not what I would recommend to people to do. If you're going to commit to a date, let's commit to the date. And, just like I did in college, where you kind of cram for the exam the last second, or you prepare your English paper the last week it's due, or whatever it is, that's human nature. So let's try to not do that. Let's just start, if you've been out of school forever, let's give yourself more time. If stuff is still a little fresh of mind, then you probably need less time. But I would commit to a date and really try to stick to it.
I agree. I think in this case, flexibility is not maybe the best thing, but it's there if you need it. But I do recommend, as you do, you set a date, you got a game plan, get to it and get through that finish line. So, we've had some fun talk about the transition of the, civil exam to CBT. I kind of want to have a little bit more fun with it. I know you're in Utah. So What kind of things you like doing out there, especially now that winter's coming? Are you a skier?
I do like to ski. I have 4 kids that keep me busy. So
Oh,
between
wow.
it all, it's like, I'm just juggling all over the place. But last year I have twins,
Oh,
and I
wow.
took the twins up, and we had them put in some ski lessons. It was really fun to watch them start learning how to do it. And so I would ski occasionally too. My wife is a snowboarder and
Oh,
a
wow.
skier. Apparently, snowboarding is easier on your knees, apparently.
Oh,
So
I didn't know
keep
that.
that in mind if you're
All
going to
right.
learn that. It sucks to, like, the first week that you try snowboarding, you're going to hate it. But once you get it, you're just cruising down that mountain.
Really? I'm from Southern California, so I used to do the boogie board and surfboarding. So would the
Mm.
surfboarding technique carry over to the snowboarding, or
Oh,
am
I
I
bet it
starting
would be
over?
very natural to you to jump on a snowboard, because the feet lay out whether your goofy foot or not,
Right.
and all of that kind of would translate. So,
So if I was a horrible surfer, I'm probably not going to be a very good snowboarder as well.
oh, it's different. You'll be fine. Just stay on that bunny hill.
Oh, that's true. I also, one thing I'm not a big fan of skiing for is those darn trees come really quick.
Oh, yeah, that's if you're doing like black diamonds, and you
Oh,
stay on the groom trails, you'll be fine.
I'll do that. So are you a Utah Jazz fan?
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan. Well,
Well,
we got a new owner with Ryan and taking things. We got Dwayne Wade is over here now. I mean, he's a
right.
part owner. So
They had a heck of a run last year.
game's on, man.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Utah Jazz. I'm always wearing the hats, even on podcasts and shows. I don't know why. I played. They have little league games here. When I was smaller, I played basketball, and I played in what they call junior jazz, and it's kind of this, recreation games for younger kids to play in. And so they give you a free jazz ticket. You go watch a jazz game. But I've just always enjoyed watching the Jazz, and the John Stockton and Karl Malone,
don't get me
and
started on them.
good old Jordan crushing
Oh,
my dreams.
oh, absolutely. I'm from Southern California. I grew up a Laker fan, Magic and Worthy and all them. And I watched all the great battles of Stockton, Malone, and they were great, great runs. And then now you guys are on a great run. So I'm thinking this for you, Isaac, you being a Jazz fan, being a Laker fan. Let's say at the end of the season, if the Lakers finish with a better record than the Jazz, then you come on a podcast wearing a Laker jersey or a Laker hat. I do the same thing. If the Jazz have a better record than Lakers, I'll wear some Utah Jazz gear.
That's an easy bet to make. You got it.
I mean, right
the
now
Lakers have a great start.
Oh, yeah, I think they're 1-2. I think that science experiment they have there might blow up, but we'll see. So I'm going to mark my calendar, and I'm going to put you on the books for having to wear some Lakers gear.
Okay. Deal.
Well, hey, I appreciate you coming out here, spending some time with us, and talking CBT. Before we get going, is there any last bit of advice you would give someone that's getting ready to take that exam come January 2?
Yeah. Get prepared, get lots of practice problems, take a course as you need it. I'm a big advocate for taking courses and go in with confidence. Don't be scared of this exam. Like I mentioned earlier, attitude in this exam is probably like 90% of the problem with a lot of students. So go in with confidence that you've practiced hard, and you need to do that. But once you're done, go in with confidence that you've done what you can do, and having a good attitude, even if you are a repeat taker multiple times. I know as people do repeat this multiple times, it really just gets them down, and they go in with a terrible attitude. And we got to get over that. So I'm a repeat taker myself. I can promise you that you can do this. Get the resources that are going to help you, and you'll be good.
Well, Isaac, great advice. And again, I appreciate you coming out here and spending some time with you. I'd love to have you back. I'd love to have you back before the end of the NBA season. That way we're both wearing what we want to wear. But to everyone else out there, we'll see you next week. And thanks for joining us.
See ya.